When disaster strikes, will you be ready?
Good evening, and we begin tonight with the monster hurricane and its deadly impact already.
When all hope is gone, will the government be there for you? If you're looking for ways to take your prepping to the next level, then you've come to the right place. Broadcasting from a secure and well-prepared location, it's time for Prepping 2.0. And now, please welcome authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher at Prepping 2.0, joined by my partner in life and my co-host on the show, Glenn Tate, who is getting back to his microphone. Hi, Glenn.
Hi there. Hi, Shelby. Another great show. This is great. Once again, we have cool guests, and I say it all the time, and people think I'm kidding, but you know me pretty well because we're like married and stuff. I don't think I'm cool, but we have cool friends.
That get us really cool guests, and today's one of them.
And we have a friend, Sean Swanson. Everybody knows him. Some of the highest rated shows we've done have been with Sean.
We need to have him again, too.
I know, we totally do. And Sean said, I got a friend. He's a New York City paramedic, and he's seeing some stuff with COVID that I think would be really interesting. And then Sean told us some things that Andy, that's our guest, Andy, had said. And I was like, yeah, we're booking this guy. So anyway, that's what it is. Once again, awesome guests because of our cool friends. And we're not cool, but that's okay. I want to give folks an overview of the show. We're going to be talking to Andy. The name of the show is What's Really Happening in New York City with COVID-19 from an NYFD medic, paramedic, EMT. They're all the same phrases. And then we're going to have Patreon questions for him. Some of you guys that are listening on radio and the internet may not know about the Patreon thing. That's a way of supporting us. It pays for microphones and professional radio producers to do the show. And Patreons get all kinds of cool special stuff, like they get to ask questions. And I'll do this with a guest when I remember to do it. We'll put it up and we'll say, hey, here's our guest. Do you guys have some questions for him? And then we read your questions and your name on the air. And the Patreon questions for guests are just amazing. It's so good. It makes the show so much better. It's more creative than what we could come up with. So we'll do Andy and Patreon questions. And then in the after show, which is the exclusive show for Patrons, we're going to do Patreon's predictions for 2020, which we've been doing, which have also been just fantabulous. And these predictions came out, I don't know, like a week or 3 weeks ago, and they're still pretty right on, a lot of them. So it's been pretty interesting.
Some of them have come true. I mean, you and I joke about this, but this collapse is unfolding pretty fast.
Well, yeah, that's right.
So what 3 weeks ago was very different than now. So
that's right. That's so March of 2020. Yeah. Sponsor mention. I wanted to mention our sponsors. You'll be hearing the ads on the internet and the radio, I guess. So anyway, we have EMP Shield. They make a device that you wire into something and it protects whatever you wire it into, car or house or generator, from an EMP spike, which is pretty cool. Numana freeze-dried foods, long-term freeze-dried foods in bigger portions, more like feeding a family. It's not my mountain house kind of camping food. Really tasty, by the way. Cati Armor, C-A-T-I. And you know what that stands for?
Come and take it.
Exactly. Come and take it armor. They make steel body armor. Good entry-level body armor. I say entry-level. It stops bullets. It's not like, you're going to chintz on quality with that, because that would be a really terrible idea. But it's steel, and it's not the light stuff, so it's a lot more affordable, because odds are you're not going to be doing like a 15-mile hike in this stuff with a full loadout in the mountains of Afghanistan at 10,000 feet. And if you are, thanks for listening.
There's other products for you out there,
right.
Yes.
And then our last one, Backwoods Home Magazine. Great magazine, comes out every quarter. We've been big subscribers. They're cool people. You get $6 off if you put 6 off, the number 6, OFF, in the coupon code. And they're great people. And so, Shelby, may I ask you...
Hey kids, what's in the merch shack?
This week in the merch shack, we have lots and lots of patiently awaiting the collapse t-shirts and merchandise. We've had those for a while now. They're a little bit more, we've joked about it in recent shows that, now they're a novelty item and a collector's item because the collapse kind of started. But they are still very relevant. I will also say this. We are updating our I Miss America t-shirt supplies. So folks that are like, my size not available, hang tight, couple weeks. we'll get those in for you. So there's that.
And I won't say what it is, but there's a brand new I Miss America product that's coming out that a lot of you have been asking for, and we listened, and we got a lot of them. So there's
yes, we
that.
did.
So,
but we got to wait on shipping. Everything has to wait on shipping right now.
This is the second thing. You're thinking about thing one. I'm thinking about thing two. We have two new IMA things that are coming. So it's good stuff.
All right. I don't know what the second one is, so I'll be surprised too. There you go. Or
Yes,
not
you do.
remembering.
That's right. Okay, so check out the Merch Shack. It's at prepping2-0.com. The shopping page, everything that we do is prepping2-0.com. Great way to find us, all the ways to listen to us, Spotify, iTunes, the radio stations, YouTube. We're on the YouTubes, and some folks listen to us on the YouTubes, as the kids call it. No, they don't, because
They can hear the archives of your Friday show on KHNC, which is
Yes.
great, which
Yes,
has
Kate.
actually become a co-hosted show since I'm home now. Yes.
Exactly. Well, with all that in mind, let's get to what everybody wants to hear, and that is Andy from New York City. Andy, say hello and tell us a little about yourself.
How you doing? This is Andy.
Yes.
I'm a FDNY emergency medical technician assigned to Station 55 in the South Bronx. I've worked on the streets in New York City on an ambulance since 1998, and I've been with the fire department on the municipal side of the job since 2007.
So you've seen a lot, you've done a lot, and now you're in the thick of the COVID soup. Shelby has a couple questions for you.
So Andy, one of the things that Sean Swanson, when he said you've got to talk to this guy, he was saying how much, and I've looked at your social media post and I see what he's saying. There's things that you are seeing on the ground because you are in the thick of the COVID-19 crisis in New York. So for those of us that are not seeing it, describe it to us. And what do you think is different that's going on that maybe we should know about?
Well, let me start off by saying thank God, the numbers are coming down. For a few weeks, it was really, I'd never seen anything like what was going on there. We were over 7,000 calls a day
Wow.
for many days in a row. We probably average around 4,500 calls a day on like an average day.
What now?
Over 7,000 runs a day.
So almost double your calls for service, call for help. Almost double is what I'm hearing you say, correct?
Yeah, it was more than we even had on 9/11.
Wow.
Well, and I'm going to ask you a little bit so that I can help paint a picture for myself and others. So the typical calls were calls for, I mean, on those days when it was such a higher volume, what were the typical calls like? What was different?
Well, see, the thing is with EMS is that we respond to literally everything. Every emergency in New York has an EMS response. So we do everything from, somebody calling up that stubbed their toe,
Yeah.
shootings, stabbings, assaults, trip and falls, childbirth, stroke, heart attack, you name it. Any kind of job we go to, we respond with, with all the other different agencies that we work alongside. Any emergency, EMS is going to be there. So we literally respond to basically every emergency in the city.
So what I'm trying to do is get a good picture of what it's been like. So when you first started out, you said it has been crazy. What has made it crazy? I can't imagine being an EMT in New York. That to me just sounds crazy to begin with. But what has made it that much more crazy? Is it because the calls are because people have COVID symptoms, or what's made it? Why would you attribute such an uptick in calls?
Well, so you have to understand that during this situation that we have, it's almost like the agency, we were responding to two, how do I explain it? It's almost like we were responding to two kinds of EMS. We have our regular stuff that we're still going to. And then on top of that, we had so many people that were sick with this SARS-CoV-2 virus.
Wow.
So, you know, we have about 400 ambulances at any given time on the streets. So, you know, you could do the math. 7,000 runs is a lot. We had units that came through FEMA, actually, from different states to help us bring down the call volume. You know, so it was just call after call. I think the numbers were approximately 50 cardiac arrests on a regular day. So at this time, a year ago, probably on average in the city, there's like 50 cardiac arrests every day. Right? I don't know, between 30 and 60, I think, was the actual number, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a while, we were over 400 plus cardiac arrests.
That's a
So
lot.
there was definitely more deaths, definitely more sick people. We have lost, I think, 8 members within the department. At some point, we had over 1,000 out sick. You know, we still have some members on ventilators. They might not make it. We've had a lot that have recovered. There's so many different symptoms. You know, some people get sick and they don't even get asymptomatic. They don't even know that they're sick.
Right.
And then, of course, you know, some people, they expire. So.
Well, you mentioned a huge uptick in cardiac arrests, and one of the theories out there is that, you know, COVID does something to some people and causes cardiac arrest, and then the second theory is that that is true, and there's almost a nasty strain of this stuff in New York City. What do you think about all that? Because I have to tell you that, you know, here in rural Washington State, I mean, the only thing we're noticing is like, you know, the police department is closed and buying a rifle, and it's taking longer to get the paperwork done. You know what I mean? I it's a problem in New York City, and I'm not saying it isn't. I'm not trying to, I don't know, downplay it, but there's virtually no effect for us out here. And then you're talking about huge spikes in cardiac arrests. Do you think, and I know you're not Dr. Fauci, you kind of talk like him, which I love the accent, by the way, but you kind of talk like him. But do you think that there's like a heart issue in all of this, and there might be a New York City strain to this?
I don't believe there's a New York City strain. If you look worldwide, it looks like the numbers are pretty much the same. I think that there's a number of different strains. I don't know how many. There's so much information that keeps changing every day, and everybody's still learning about this. So far, there's no medication or treatment that we know is going to work and fix it. Okay? They're shooting in the dark. There's a lot of different treatments. There are a lot of different hospitals that they're trying. Some work for some people, amazing, and some don't work at all for somebody. So we've heard that there's a problem with the oxygen binding into the red blood cell. Possibly the iron is separating somehow from the hemoglobin, and deoxygenated blood ends up becoming thick. Now, in the past couple of weeks, we've seen an increase in clotting factor. Of course, like, this is not something I can see on the ambulance. This is what we're being told by the doctors that we work around every day. There's some type of increase in clotting factor. Some hospitals have started to give like thrombolytics, which is like medications that they make it for a stroke patient, because they know that increase in cardiac arrest, strokes, deep vein thrombosis, you know, some different symptoms with like skin. Like, they had one thing I just read about, an article. They were calling it COVID feet, and it almost makes your toes look like they're frostbitten.
Wow.
But, you know, I haven't personally seen that on the street. That's not something I've seen personally, but I read an article about it. And, you know, this is all due to increased clotting factors and problems in the bloodstream with increased clotting, causing thrombi.
Wow. So I have so many questions. I have so many questions for you. But one thing that I want to ask you, and I ask you specifically because all we can do where we are is watch the news, which is not always helpful.
Usually unhelpful.
Unhelpful and fearful. So what myths out there are not true that if you could speak it to all of our listeners, you could say, listen, you're hearing this is not true, or any rumors even that you've heard that you want to just dispel right now.
Okay. Not true. It's not the flu. It's not the flu. I've always, stood by the fact that we don't know 100% of the numbers. In other words, if we don't test the entire body of people, we can never get a true statistic because you need 100% of people to get a stat. But what we're seeing, in my opinion, is that 80% of people that we know are sick with this are okay.
Yeah.
That's comforting, which is good. Yeah.
Right. But 20%, they really are sick. They go to the hospital, and probably 10% of those people are so sick that they end up in the intensive care unit. Out of those people, a number of them go on a ventilator, and probably 50 to 70% never make it off the ventilator. Okay, the ventilator is not a cure-all. You can't just put somebody on a ventilator and they're going to be okay. That's not the way this disease works.
Right.
So for many people, it may be like the flu. You may just feel sick, and you'll be okay. But for some people, it's definitely not the flu. I believe that the people that do get really sick, I mean, listen, I've been doing this job a long time. H1N1, swine flu, bird flu, tuberculosis, Ebola we dealt with. We deal with every communicable disease is what we do as part of our job. We've never seen the body count like what we saw with this COVID in the past few weeks.
Wow.
It's unheard of.
Wow. So, and we got time.
Oh, geez. We got like
We got
6-7
lots of
minutes.
time.
That's a lifetime on this show. Are you
Geez.
kidding me?
So, first of all, hats off to you and your colleagues for the work that you are doing. The work to just because what you just said, I compound what you just said, that you have this huge upticks in calls. You have your staff understaffed because people are calling in sick because they are sick. You have lost colleagues to this, and yet you're still working. So thank you. And I'm sure all of our listeners, thank you as well. I want to ask you this. The coworkers of yours that have lost their lives to this, is it the COVID? Is it the underlying heart thing? Is it stress? What would you say? And again, I want to honor them because they kept on working until they couldn't work.
Yeah. So no, it's definitely the COVID. And this doesn't. Of course, if you have comorbidities, if you're elderly, you have probably a higher risk of having a complication. However, there are young people that are dying from this virus disease. This is not, only old people. It's not only people with compromised immune systems. Okay, this is everybody. We've had, members on the job who have passed away, and they really don't have any comorbidities. They're otherwise, healthy individuals. They're working every day. It just hits different people in different ways.
So
yeah.
just to
Sometimes like a delay on it. So if I step on you, just cut me right off.
Yeah.
That's all right. We can do that.
We'll be New Yorkers soon. No, I'm just kidding.
So what I'm hearing you say is what we have all been hearing on the news. If you are over a certain age, if you have underlying, health issues, autoimmune issues, you're at risk. But there is still younger folks, I'm going to say, I don't know, under 40, perfectly healthy, no underlying conditions. They can still, I would say the odds are smaller from what you're saying, if I can extract that from what you're saying. But it's still, hitting those that we aren't expecting to hit is what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely. Listen, if you're a healthy individual, your odds are always going to be less to become very sick, with a disease. If you start out healthy, you have a better chance of ending healthy. But this is not something that is isolated to somebody that's, with a compromised immune system, or just, somebody elderly. Mm-hmm. This is everybody. It's affecting everybody. Young people, old people, heavy people, skinny people, people with a compromised immune system, or people that are athletic. It wasn't a joke. For 3 weeks, we were watching, everybody here now that said, nah, this is nothing, this is no big deal. I think at this point, they know somebody, or they know somebody that knows somebody that has cancer away from themselves.
And I got to say, you must be talking about people in New York City, because, again, it is not a thing out here. It just, and I find that, fascinating. Do you attribute it to the fact that people are packed in so tight in New York City? I mean, why do you think it's hitting New York City so much harder than anywhere else that I can think of?
I would say travel, with tourism and the shipping ports. New York is a huge hub from people from all over, coming from different places.
Yeah.
We know that this originated in Wuhan, but I think the last numbers that were coming out of the newspapers were saying that a lot of infections actually came from Europe, just from tourists. And like I said, you can be asymptomatic and carry this and infect somebody, and you might never become sick.
So let me ask you this too, and we have like 2 minutes. Do you think, and I'm wondering if this is going to fall into, is this a myth or not? Do you think that social distancing is doing any good, or is it not?
Just destroying the economy, and
right?
People are still dying.
I think that distancing and proper hygiene is good. Mm-hmm. I personally, I can't speak on behalf of anybody else. My personal opinion, I think that it should be done voluntarily. I think that if you own a private business or whatever, you can make your own decisions as a business owner. But yeah, I think that if you know that there's a problem and you're educated properly on it, and what you can do to help avoid, contaminating somebody else or transmitting this disease, you have a personal responsibility as a good American to try and do that without the force behind government telling you to do that.
Amen.
Amen to that, yeah.
And one thing I wanted to note to folks, you're now the third, I think we mentioned this off the air. If it was on the air, I'm repeating myself, sorry, but we've had 3 New Yorkers on the show. And my West Coast upbringing was always that people in New York are, all liberals and stuff like that. And the 3 guys we've had on, Jack Decker, Roy, NYPD guy, and now you. And I know you're a patriot because you're a friend of Sean's, and I know how you know Sean, and I know that's why you're a patriot. I love you guys in New York that are like this, and so I want to let people know I had a wrong stereotype, and don't be a dope like me, as I often say.
Don't be like Glenn.
Don't be like Glenn. Well, Shelby, why don't you take us out to the break here?
Folks, we have so many more questions to ask Andy from New York, so don't go away. Stay tuned.
We'll be right back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate right after this.
Prepping 2.0 is about that next level of prepping. One of the key 2.0 items to have is bulletproof body armor plates. I used to think body armor was too tactical for a regular guy like me, but it isn't. Give yourself, your family, and your team an unfair advantage when bullets are flying. Body armor used to be expensive and hard to get. Not anymore. KD Armor, and that stands for Come and Take It, makes solid and affordable body armor for normal people. Get body armor while you can. The clowns in Congress are trying to prohibit future sales. KD Armor is the place to get it. CATI Armor.com. Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount when you use the coupon code GRANT.
When the grid goes down, darkness will descend fast. Used to be there was nothing you could do about an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, or CME, coronal mass ejection. Now you can protect your electronics, protect your family, thanks to EMP Shield. EMP Shield invented a simple-to-install device that prevents whatever's connected to it from frying in an EMP or CME, and it costs just a few $100s. EMP Shield has been tested by independent laboratories and passed muster with the government, which has ordered lots of them. Google EMP Shield and see for yourself. And save some money. Get a $50 discount per device. Go to prepping2-0.com. Click on the Friends and Affiliates page, then click on the EMP Shield logo. At checkout, use coupon code PREPPING2.0. It's all one word.
PrepperNet, where preppers unite. Looking to meet other like-minded people in your area? Looking to start your own prepper group? Already have a group? Join PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet has gathered the biggest names in the industry to help unite preppers everywhere. Join John Jacob Schmidt, Scott Hunt, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, Glenn Tate, Shelby Gallagher, Charlie Hogwood, Samuel Culper, Survivor Jane, Rick Austin, Franklin Horton, Ryan Mitchell, and Brian Duff. Our team is united. Check us out at PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet, where preppers unite. PrepperNet.com.
Shelby Gallagher here. We found that you need to layer your food preps.
Yeah, this is Glenn Tate here. A lot of times the hardest part of layering is the long-term foods. We love Numana Foods, which have a 25-year shelf life and are non-GMO. Also, organic meals are available.
Numana comes in family-style portions and in bulk. This is not backpacking food. It's family meals that last for at least 25 years. The perfect freeze-dried part of your food layering.
You can get a sample of Numana meals for $19.95 and see for yourself. You will be amazed.
Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount by entering the code PREP.
Go to Numana.com or click the link on the Prepping 2.0 website.
Give it a try. Numana.com. That is NUMANNA.com.
And we're back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome back, everyone. Shelby Gallagher, second half of Prepping 2.0 with Andy from the New York Fire Department. He's a medic. He has been in the thick of it with the COVID-19 crazy, tragic.
7,000 calls a day.
Oh my gosh, in New York City.
450 cardiac arrests a day. Oh my goodness.
Well, and I will say this. One thing I want to say, we're about ready to go in with some of our Patreon questions, which will be great because our regular listeners will get to hear some of those great questions. But one thing, if I can play devil's advocate to you, Glenn, it is going to be different, I think, in an epidemic, pandemic. You and I live in a rural place.
Absolutely.
We're not near people.
Agree.
Yeah. But
we're far away from people and we like it that way.
Yeah, and that's why we did it. Yeah. And Andy's jealous at this point.
We have more chickens than we do people in a square mile here.
That would be
I think I like the sound of that.
Yeah, exactly.
The eggs are outrageous too. They're delicious.
I will say this though, in Seattle, where this was ground zero for the first, for a couple weeks in February, all eyes were on Seattle and King County as the beginnings of COVID in the United States. It bounced over to New York, but I do think that a denser population, just by sheer numbers, it's going to spread faster. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I think we actually agree on that.
Yeah.
And that was my point, is density. And then Andy brought up a good point about the travel. And I don't know much about New York City. I mean, there's Biggie and Tupac. I'm obviously on Tupac's side. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't really know New York, right? That's a reference lost on many, but Andy gets it. And so I don't know much about it, but now you think about it. Yeah, that's a giant port, giant travel center. And in Europe, all kinds of people in New York City are like Italian, or they're from different parts of Europe, maybe Poland or whatever. And then they go back and forth and family comes there and people from all over the world want to come and see. I almost said the Space Needle, but I meant the Statue of Liberty, right? And so
it's a holiday time, so I think this probably started. We're hearing more and more of that this was in the United States as early as December. So anyway, we can go off on that. But
Here we go with some Patreon questions. Thank you, Patreons, for your awesome questions as usual. First one is more of an observation. It's from Francesca Simpson. She says about this: can't wait. I think most of us on here, meaning Patreons, can see what's going on here. The numbers just don't add up at all. And I think what she means by that is it's this big supposed, terrible thing going on in the country, but the numbers don't add up. And now I'm realizing, if that's what she means, that's because we haven't heard from any Andys. We don't know anybody in New York. I don't know any. Well, I know Roy in New York, and I know Jack Decker, but I mean, it's like we don't know it, and it's not on the news. And I got to tell you, we're used to. No offense to New York, and I'd say the same about LA too. We're used to people from New York and LA on TV saying like, "Oh my God, we're like the center of the universe," right? And no offense, Andy, but you know what I mean. And then we're like, "Oh yeah," there's that famous cartoon of, the world from a New Yorker's viewpoint, and it like ends at the Hudson River, and then there's like Kansas and like, the Pacific Ocean, right? But anyway, there's that. So anyway, Brian Mason says, as a fellow first responder working in New York City, wow, that's cool. See, we have cool Patreons. We got all kinds of people everywhere.
All over.
He says, my facility has had some problems getting ambulances or a bus to respond to us because of New York City being overwhelmed. Has FEMA provided ambulances? You mentioned, Andy, that was the case. And EMTs been has FEMA provided ambulances and EMTs, and that's been able to lighten your workload? And has the Javits Center and Comfort USNS Comfort facilities actually helped? He says, I've heard they have really taken many patients. It is also rumored that the New York governor has directed upstate New York COVID patients be sent to the city. Is there any truth to that? So there you go. Let's break it down. FEMA and EMTs. Yeah, I don't know why I'm having a problem with this, Andy. FEMA ambulances and FEMA EMTs, have they been a factor?
Yeah, I believe at the height of this thing, we had like 200 ambulances from like 28 or 30 different states helping us out. They definitely help bring the call volume down. I know the department's been really good about hooking them up with like a smartphone with our CAD system in it so that they can actually receive the jobs through the phone like we do on the computer in the truck. And read the text in the job and be able to respond accordingly to protect yourself, when they go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like 200 ambulances we had helping us out, and pretty sure they're going to be here until tomorrow or maybe sometime in the middle of the month.
Mm-hmm.
They're still here. I think maybe tomorrow they're gonna finish up.
Okay, and then the Javits Center and the USNS Comfort, have those been helpful?
So what we understood is that they never opened those up for like 911 receiving. We never took anybody there directly. I believe that they were supposed to be used for overflow. From what we understood, and of course it's just what I was hearing, I never saw any official paperwork on how we would use this, because I don't think that really pertains to us as a 911 service. The boat was originally supposed to be used for non-COVID patients in order to do surgeries and things that people needed that couldn't be done in the hospital, because the hospitals at some point were completely overwhelmed with COVID patients. I don't know what happened with that, and I think the boat might have gone to another location now,
mm-hmm.
which is a good thing. I think that's good. I think that the numbers, maybe as high as they weren't high enough that required the full use of that boat, which I'm really happy for, because it was really crazy here for a few weeks.
Yeah.
As far as the Javits Center, I think that there was people being transferred there, and I think that some of the enhancement units that had come from out of state were transferring people from hospitals into the Javits Center.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then Brent Ingvardson asks, is it true that EMS is not coding arresting, which means dying, patients? If so, when were you running your codes? Did you modify the ACLS algorithm based on differing responses to the virus? He says, I'm a CRNA in Louisiana and started my career as a paramedic. Thank you for your service. So I'm going to break it down. Anytime I see the word algorithm, I get really scared because I hate numbers. And I'm scared of things like that. So I guess the thing is it true that EMS is not coding dying patients?
Okay, so I can explain that. I will tell you that as of today, we went back to our original format for all cardiac arrest calls.
Well, that's
so
good.
We've actually brought it back to where we were prior to COVID as of today. During the height of this pandemic, the department itself didn't make the rule, okay? Everything that EMS follows comes through our regional EMS council. So what they did was they brought down the response to 20 minutes of full code treatment. And if we got no response, no return of spontaneous circulation, no shockable rhythm in 20 minutes, then we pronounce. Which really wasn't that much different than what we were already doing. The only thing that they took out was the phone call to the doctor prior to pronouncing.
Mm-hmm.
But when we respond to cardiac arrests, we're basically bringing the emergency room to you.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we do in the field is the same thing that's going to happen in the hospital. Once we give all the medications, we still have no shockable rhythm. Bringing you to the hospital won't change any of that.
Right.
Okay.
You know, so
yeah.
But we didn't change what we do for you.
Okay, and so this is different than like, you know, rumors out there. It's like, oh yeah, you know, in New York they're just like throwing bodies out on the streets or some crazy thing. So that sounds like it's not true.
No, absolutely not. That never happened. We were running the full code the same way that we always did. We just shortened the time frame, but we're still giving the same meds. Everything's the same. Like I said, now they're back to pre-COVID response. But to put this in perspective, states out west, possibly where you are, had been doing this for 30 years, what we were doing just during the COVID.
Wow.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe yes. There's plenty of other states that were already doing this prior to us doing it just for the COVID people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Ben Wheeler asks, he says, is population density a major factor in the number of cases in NYC? And we talked about that. And he says, or is there a disproportionate number of immune-compromised people within the NYC population? What do you think?
I don't think there's a disproportionate amount of immunocompromised people. I think that, first of all, any major city that has a dense environment is going to have more cases of whatever's going around.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just, you know, if you walk into an elevator and you touch the same button that 100 other people that they touch, and you don't wash your hands before you touch your face or your mouth, I think you have a high chance of contracting something. So I think that if you were living with your own family in a quiet rural community someplace, you have less chance of contracting this as opposed to being, you know, on a train or on a bus or in a building that has 1,000 other families in it. I think that every major city or densely populated area in the country is experiencing a higher number of infections than, like, let's say, a rural area.
Yep.
You know, yeah, I think that would definitely play a part in it. I don't know if I don't think there's a higher number of people that are immunocompromised in New York, though. I think, you know, a lot of people, they walk, they bike. You know, not everybody's out of shape in New York.
Yeah.
So,
like anywhere else, you know?
So, and let me jump in here too. This is one of those myths, and I'm trying to sprinkle this out throughout our conversation. I heard on a pretty major news-ish outlet recently that the subways are still running. Is that true?
They are running. I believe that Governor Cuomo is going to start shutting them down from like 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. just for like cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, that's the slowest time anyway, you know, for subways. But yeah, they were running. I think they might have had like a modified schedule, but they were still running.
Oh, well, I just find that amazing because they don't exude cleanliness.
No, you know, listen, people, you know, the news, I think they scare a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Not that this wasn't scary. Don't get me wrong. Working this was very scary. You know, it's something that we've never seen before, the amount of people that were sick. And it peaked almost overnight. It seemed like one day it was normal and the next day it was just a complete, you know, it was crazy. But, you don't get sick just by looking at somebody that's sick.
Right.
You physically have to either breathe the air in that they exhaled, that either contains droplets or aerosolized particles of this disease, or you have to touch something that they touched that was contaminated, and then touch your face, your eyes, your mouth, your nose.
Right.
So even if you're in the subway, if you try and distance yourself from people while you're there, if you wash your hands before you touch your face, if you're trying to breathe their air,
right,
you have less of a chance. You can ride the subways and maybe not contract this, or you will contract the disease, but there are ways, of course, that you can try and eliminate that.
Sure.
Okay, Trevor Congable asks, are you doing anything out of your normal routine to keep your immune system up, or are you taking or anything additional, I guess, like supplements and stuff? What a great question. It's like, hey, what are you doing? What are some practical stuff, right?
I am. I sure am, yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I have no idea if it's going to work or not. It's all speculative, right? People say that certain things boost your immune system up, so I am doing that. I'm taking 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day.
Good.
I'm taking 5,000 international units of vitamin D3.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm taking a multivitamin.
Taking that last thing, we didn't catch that. What was that?
A multivitamin?
Oh, very good.
Oh, yeah, multivitamin. Okay.
Well, I feel really good about my vitamin C intake right now because it's been a lot.
That's right.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's going to work, but I guess it can't hurt, right?
Right. Yeah, because it's not like mercury. It's not going to build up. It's not a toxin. Pinto75 says, what differences in reactions are you seeing from dense urbanites? I think he means not dumb urbanites, but densely populated urbanites, residential urbanites, and suburbanites. So I guess he's getting at densities here, to COVID-19 or any other government-related stresses, medical, economic, food supplies, legal. He says, I'm looking to get a feel for what to expect from different types of people. I get it, as stress increases over time with all this. So I think this is, pretty obvious. I think what Pinto75 is getting at is people that live in even more dense settings in New York City than other people versus people that are in kind of dense settings versus people who are in not as dense settings. Are the densely populated ones, are they more uptight? I mean, for lack of a better term, I don't know. See, this is kind of what we all think about New York City out here west.
So you're asking if there's like more infections in a urban area?
Yeah, and he says the different types of people as stress increases. I think he's trying to get a feel for what reactions and stress levels people have based on how densely they live.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I spend a lot of time on Long Island, and I don't really think there's much of a difference. I think that at this point, most people that were like non-believers to begin with, they realized that there was definitely a problem that they want to alleviate. Nobody likes everything being closed. I don't think anybody really wants everything shut down. And, I think everybody would like to go back to normal, but I think that there's a balance. They realize that they need to try and keep infections down. There's a lot of people walking around with masks.
Mm-hmm.
People are more cognizant with the cleanliness end of it. They're trying to, pure all their hands or to wash. Social distancing pretty much has been voluntarily done. People aren't up on top of each other anymore. They're trying to keep a few feet of distance. I don't really see I don't see too much stress with people that are out.
Okay.
I think everybody that's out, they're aware of it, and they're trying to avoid becoming infected. We're not seeing anybody, acting crazy or anything out here,
Well, good. That's good. Do you think, and this is me throwing a question in there too, do you think the economic end of this, owners of businesses that are being shut down, owners of rental apartments and they're not being paid rent, that sort of thing, do you think there's an economic level of stress are you seeing an uptick in that's kind of secondary to COVID? And so, past this question if you don't want to answer it, but I feel people's economic stress is going up.
People are upset. There's people that listen. I've said since the beginning. I have my personal views. I don't know if you looked at my online profile, right? But I'm a pretty staunch constitutionalist, right? Which by nature puts me right in the middle. I don't consider myself right or left. I'm a constitutionalist. That's right in the middle, right? That's the way this country was founded. I believe in founding values. With that being said, I always maintained the thought that everybody's job is essential. When they talk about essential workers, even though I would be considered this quote-unquote essential worker, I think that everybody's an essential worker to somebody.
Right.
If you have a family, it doesn't matter what you do for work. You're an essential worker to your family.
Amen.
And, I feel like, personally, right, had they been honest about this since the beginning, educated people as to the dangers of this disease, and promoted voluntary social distancing, hygiene, and mask usage to avoid your droplets from infecting other people, I don't believe necessarily that everything would have had to be closed. I think we would have accomplished the same goal and been able to keep everything running properly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Derek Smiley says, I'm sure the question will be answered during the show, but if I were to believe the mainstream media, New York City is a wasteland of death and disease, complete with mass graves being dug. I think you addressed this, Andy. Derek says, the governor was pleading for respirators, and then just a few days later, he was sharing them with other states since the need wasn't as large as anticipated. But the alleged death toll is ugly. The optics on this look dubious at best, but I'm not a first responder like you. I'm sure you've seen plenty, yet with my ties to hospitals in California and now in Idaho, the hospitals are stunningly quiet. He does work, by the way. Derek does work in hospitals and other places. He says, by the way, we appreciate your service. So I think he's making the point that we covered that, we all just assume that this New York's just like basket case and dead bodies everywhere. And that's not true, which is good, which we appreciate. And then, what do you make of this? I think I know what you're going to say, but you probably surprised me. What do you think about this idea that hospitals are stunningly quiet and sort of empty and all of that? I think there's a reason for that, but what do you make of all that?
All right. Well, I've seen all the videos online about people walking into the ER, talking about there's nobody here, the hospital's empty. A few weeks ago when those videos were popping up online, I think there was some weird hashtag or something that people were like, film your hospital or something. First off, you have to understand that the hospitals during the height of this, were not allowing even immediate family in with the patients. That's the first thing. We were not allowing family to accompany patients in the ambulance. The hospitals were not allowing any family or friends inside with the patient. This is because the hospitals were so overwhelmed that they were no longer able to keep COVID patients in respiratory isolated areas. So there is not one of us that will walk into a hospital without wearing a minimum of an N95 mask, because there is no longer, especially during the height of this, there was no longer a respiratory isolated area, which means that the entire emergency department could have been, an infectious hazard.
Yeah.
Right? So that being said, all these videos that were popping up, coming out, talking about the hospitals being empty and everything, they will never make it into the emergency department. They were making it into a waiting area, which the hospitals were diligently working to keep clear. Because if people were coming to the hospital with non-life-threatening conditions during the peak of this, they were very quickly discharged. Because what was originally happening is that you might have had a stable COVID patient coming in sitting in the waiting area next to a guy that sprained his ankle.
Right.
Now that guy with the sprained ankle risks being contaminated by a sick patient. So they were diligently working to try and avoid cross-contamination and clear out stable patients as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
We have about... Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Now the numbers have come down. So, the past week, the hospitals have been completely manageable, and the numbers have been much lower than they were a few weeks ago. And honestly, I'm not going to complain about that. I think it's a good thing.
We have about a minute and a half in this segment until we go in the after show, and our next question comes from John Bowery, and it's a pretty long one. I don't want to get started and then say, oh, hey, everybody, we got to go. So I think we'll just ask you this, Andy. I mean, what are your overall thoughts? Anything you haven't said so far? You want to get a message out to folks. What do you need to say that's been left unsaid?
If it didn't hit your community, be lucky it didn't hit your community. Don't fight it. Don't think it was something that's not real. It was extremely real for the communities that it hit, and we had a lot of deaths. That's true.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Well, we have about a minute, and what do you think? Do you think we're going to get a second wave? And if that's something you can't answer in a minute, then I'm sorry for asking a big question like that.
No, there's a lot of speculation on it. Nobody knows how it's going to be affected with the temperature changing. Summer's on the way. We hope it'll be like the other illnesses out there, that it'll kind of die off in the summer, but nobody really knows.
Yeah. It's a weird one. The way it affects people. It's really weird. Well, gosh, Andy, like I said before, thank you so much. We kind of dug a little bit in the woods a little bit on this and kind of put you on the spot maybe a few times. But again, from those of us on the West Coast to you on the East Coast, thank you for your service. Thank you for your commitment. I'm going to say goodbye to our regular listeners as we go into the after show with our famous quote from Benjamin Franklin: "Failing to prepare is preparing to fail." Everyone have a great week and God bless.
You've been listening to Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate. All of the fun and easy prepping information heard on this podcast can be found online at prepping2-0.com. You can also find out more about Glenn's books online at 299days.com and about Shelby's books online at agreatstate.com. Until next time, be smart, be safe, and be prepared.